Welcome, everybody, to Come Back to Love radio show. We are on Dream Visions 7, and I'm your host, Robyn Vogel. Welcome to our new listeners. We're so glad you're here today. Welcome to those that have been listening each and every week. Come Back to Love is the radio show where we explore the journeys of healing, connection, and transformation in love and relationships. I'm your host, Robyn Vogel, love and intimacy coach, internal family systems therapist, and the creator of Heal Your Heart. Join me as I share stories, tools, and insights to help you rewire your love story, whether it's about overcoming heartbreak, unraveling old patterns, or reigniting the spark in your current relationship. Together, we'll explore how love begins within and expands outward to create meaningful, fulfilling connections with others. You can tune in to Come Back to Love every Thursday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern on Dream Visions 7 radio network. Listen online on your mobile device, in your car, or simply ask Alexa to play Dream Vision 7. In each episode, I welcome incredible guests who bring their unique perspectives and expertise to help us dive into topics like self-compassion, healing childhood wounds, and creating the love we desire and deserve. Today, I have incredible guests that I have known for many, many years. We've got Laurie Handlers and Michael Gibson, partners in love and business. I'm just throwing that in. And I'm going to share with you some more information about each of them. Laurie Handlers is the author of international bestseller Sex and Happiness, The Tantric Laws of Intimacy. She teaches people ways to increase pleasure and return to love with themselves and their partners. Having done all of the work herself, Laurie is an expert in the field of sexuality, intimacy, and relationships. To Laurie, sexuality is the portal to healing, and this work connects us to our creative life force. Michael Gibson has been immersed in the study of sacred sexuality and personal transformation since 2008. He's a certified sex and happiness coach, a seasoned practitioner, and the co-founder of the Academy for Men. As the creator of Just Add Skill workshops, he empowers men with practical tools for deeper connection and confidence. Together, they have created something that we will talk about here, the Extraordinary Lovers Experience. And Laurie and Michael co-facilitate that workshop, that retreat, both in person and online and worldwide. I'm looking forward to diving into that. So grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, sit down, relax. I often will say, grab a journal and a pen, take lots of notes because there's lots to learn here. And welcome everybody to Come Back to Love. We're on Dream Vision 7 radio network. Welcome, Laurie. Welcome, Michael. So glad you guys are here.
We're glad to be here too. And I wanted to just add this. This is the
Oh,
second book, Sex and Happiness. It gets better with age. I
ooh.
just felt like that was missing from my bio. So
Yes, 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 yes. I'm so glad you shared that. For those of you that are watching, you've seen the image. For those of you listening, that tagline was, "It gets better with age." Sex, yeah, sex and happiness, it gets better with age. Doesn't everything get better with age? I know that's a little bit debatable, but
Depends.
well, let's say we appreciate it better. Like I
yes,
appreciate everything better with age.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Things I didn't appreciate before. So yeah.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So
So that
you,
wasn't in my bio, so I felt like adding it.
I'm really glad you did. I'm really
Yeah.
glad you did. That, I need to get my hands on that book right away.
It's good. It's really good.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah.
Lori, you have been teaching for so many years. I think you started when you were 5 or 6 or something.
I did.
Because you still look the same age to me as you did, 25 years ago when we met. Um, yeah, so tell us a little bit about who you are and like how you got into this work and
Well, I always thought that there was more to sex than what was being presented. When I first started having sexual intercourse, I thought, this is what I waited for. This is it. This is terrible. Like it wasn't fun. It wasn't great. It wasn't like it wasn't illuminating. It wasn't what I expected anyway. So I was very curious as to like something like, how could we go deeper with this? How could people really, really connect and go deeper? And I mean, in college, I just didn't have any partners that were willing to talk about it. They
Mm.
were like, she's crazy. This girl's crazy. So that's who I was, this crazy girl. And in 1986, I read an article in the Yoga Journal, which I lived in Boston then, and I subscribed to Yoga Journal, so it came in the mail. And there was an article about Margot Anand. And I went, oh, this is what I've been waiting for. Wow. But there was no internet, so I didn't know how to find Margot Anand. So it took another 10 years
Oh my
before I found
goodness.
Tantra. Yeah. And then when I found Tantra, the first day in class, I wasn't with Margot Anand. I was with a woman named Bodhi Avanasha. And the first day in class, I went, this is it. This is my life from now on. So that was 1996.
Mm.
Mhm.
And I started teaching about 2 years later, 3 years later, and I haven't stopped. Oh, and I know one other thing. At that time, my work was welfare to work programs
Mm.
for under the Clinton administration. And when I had 15 employees. I was doing federal, state, and city government interventions for welfare, having people come off the welfare rolls. And when George W. Bush got elected, I don't know what year that was, but
Mm.
probably around 2000, he took all those contracts and he gave them to faith-based organizations. And I didn't own a church. I wasn't going to own a church. That's not my thing.
Right.
So So I said, I know sex always sells. I'm going to be a full-time Tantra teacher. And that was like, that just shifted me into a whole nother realm. And I always say that George W. did one good thing.
I was going to say, thank you, President Bush.
Made Laurie a Tantra teacher.
He
That's
made me a
amazing.
Tantra teacher. And
That is hilarious.
yeah, I mean, I was already doing workshops. I was always doing workshops, but
Yeah.
this was where I said, I declared, this is it. I'm just going to do the thing that lights me up the most.
Wow.
So, yeah. So that's a little bit about how I got into it.
Quite.
And yeah, and it's 2025 now. So um I've been at it for this for 25 years. I've been in the
Yeah.
workshop space though since the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
So
Wow.
yeah.
Yep.
Beautiful. Well, I know, Michael, I did a little bit of intro, but it's always good to hear your voice, both of your voices, of course, but like, how did you get into this work, personal growth,
Ah,
self-discovery?
I went through a devastating divorce in 2007.
Mm.
My then wife made it very clear that we didn't have anything going forward, and so in 2007, I went through a deep depression. In 2008, I began looking into how do I make myself better. Part of it was to see if there was a possibility to get back together with her, but the rest of it was a motivation to just become a better person. And so I found myself in Landmark education, and I did a lot of work with Landmark. I'm very grateful for their programs.
Mm.
And that also led me into the world of, well, if I'm not going to be with this woman again, who am I going to be with? And that was really on my mind. I thought, well, how am I going to be with another woman again? I hadn't dated in 16 years. I didn't know what women wanted at that point. I was kind of a newbie in the world, and I was
Mm.
pushing 40 at the time. And so,
So
yeah,
old.
it was like, what do I do? And in around it was around 2000, I think 14, that I discovered Tantra, and that was through years and years of crash and burn and doing all kinds of work trying to get myself to the point where I could not only attract a woman but really hold one, keep one.
Mm.
And I found Tantra, but it wasn't the Tantra that Laurie teaches. It was this person teaching what he called Tantra massage, and it
Mm.
was very sensual and sexual, and it was beautiful. And I still use some of his techniques today, but it wasn't Tantra.
Mm.
And one day I met Laurie Handlers, and I did not know that it was Laurie Handlers. Like, I had no idea who she was in the world. She was
Mm.
already a force to be reckoned with, an international speaker, best-selling. I had no idea who she was.
Right.
And how we met was we both met at clothing optional dance party where a mutual friend invited me, and it was the first time I'd ever been to anything like that. And I walk up to this bar or the counter where all the
The
wine
kitchen
is.
counter.
The kitchen, I call it the wine bar. It was a kitchen counter with wine on it. And Lori walks up next to me, and I look over and I see this well-dressed, attractive woman, and I say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And pleasantries, and we talk about wine and what we liked, and had you tried this, and you should try that, and it was a nice brief conversation, but that was it. There was we had no attraction to each other. It was like, she's not my type, I'm not her type. Lori is slightly older than I am, and so uh, that was it. Well, 5 days later, that same couple that invited me to the first thing invited me to a second thing. And I walk in, and Lori is sitting at the first chair right there. And I go, "Oh, I remember you. Lori, yeah, Lori. Oh, yeah, Michael. Okay, great." And in this thing that we're doing, I don't want to name the thing, but in this thing that we're doing, they're teaching something called orgasmic meditation. And I was very interested in that. And I was still evolving. And I said, they have several, what were they, things that like games that they play. And one of the things that they did was this thing called the hot seat. And so they put me on the hot seat. I was a first volunteer, of course. And so they put me on the hot seat and they asked the question, if you could have anything in the world, what is it that you want? And I thought for a moment and I said, well, I believe there's a goddess in every woman, and that's who I want to meet. And Lori, sitting on the first chair, has this, and she raises her hand and she says, have you ever told anybody this before? And I said, no, I haven't. So the rest of the night goes on.
I made a decision in that moment.
The rest of the night goes on. This is going to be a teaching moment, folks. Write this down. The rest of the night goes on, and I'm just about to, I paid for it. I'm going. I want to learn how to do this thing. And so I'm just about to walk out the door, and she steps in front of me. And she says, excuse me, but I think you and I should have that glass of wine we talked about the other night. And I
Right
said,
now, right now.
right now. And I said, really? And she said, yes. And I said, well, why is that? And she said, because I am the goddess. And what you said made me a little wet. And I went like this.
With your glasses down on your nose.
Let's go have that glass of wine.
Hold your glasses down.
Well, I kind of went like this, but these glasses are much taller, and I kind of went like this, and she was like, anyway.
He goes, oh, really?
Oh, really? So anyway.
I said, yeah, we should go right now.
So what's interesting is that now that we look back on that, I realize if she would have done that any other way, I might not have gotten her interest. Like, because men are stupid. I'm going to tell on men right now for a second. Men are stupid. We don't get it when women are coming on to us or flirting with us or interested. We're kind of dumb. It's not our fault. We need direct intervention.
Yes.
And Lori could have said anything to me, but what she said, that caught my attention. And we went and had a really in-depth conversation. Within 5 minutes, I said, could we date? And she said, yes, but.
No, I said, yes, and.
Yes, and. I come with like a Surgeon General's warning on a pack of cigarettes. And I'm like, what? And she says, yeah, I will disrupt your life. Now, at the time, I was a network engineer. I was actually out building data centers for like American Express and DHL and all these big companies. I had a high-paying job. I was traveling the country. I was involved in architecture and development and support. That's what I was doing before I met her. And she said she would disrupt my life, and I said, I'm in. And that's how I got into the whole world of Tantra, because then she invited me to her Tantra class, Bliss, which is a one-day Tantra class. And she goes, this is not anything like you think you've learned.
What you think you know.
She goes, you think you know Tantra? Well, okay, come to this. And I got to tell you, I didn't know anything about Tantra until I got to that class. And that's where my road truly started. It was, 10 years ago? Wow. Closing in on 11 years ago.
Wow.
So that's how I got started.
Wow. So I've heard that story before, but I loved hearing it again. And I
Yeah.
wonder, it's actually just such a perfect lead in. You said, Michael, oh, there's a few some tips in here and some tools actually. So I wonder if the two of you could, just from your story, Michael, actually pull out and highlight just a few of the things, the few of the salient points for people that are seeking relationship. And some of them do apply to people that are in relationship that are, but I wonder if we could start with just for the people that are seeking, like there's a few really beautiful things in there that can be highlighted.
So the first thing that I would highlight is the fact that I did work on myself.
Hmm.
Like I went and spent money, thousands of dollars to educate myself on the human experience and then also who I am, my belief systems, which were never challenged before. I never challenged those belief systems before. Landmark got me to the point where I could say, why do I believe this? How was this was I indoctrinated or did I receive instruction? So that's the first thing I
Also,
would highlight.
communication skills. You have excellent communication skills.
Thank you. No, really, thank you.
You do.
The second thing was that well, through this, I learned communication skills.
Yes.
And I have a thirst for never ending improvement. Like I really want to learn more and become better. You know, I feel like my energy needs to be something that is a thermostat rather than a thermometer. I want to set the stage for the environment I'm in. So that's a big part of leadership and it's subtle. The other thing that I did is I became aware of my own masculinity and that masculinity could be one of two things. It could either be toxic or it could be safe.
Hmm.
And the one that I choose is safe, unless it needs to be toxic. And there are certain situations in which that will come out when I'm protecting someone, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing.
But I want to add stuff.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want to
definitely
add.
add some of the
Please.
Yeah, I
highlighted
want to add
pieces.
that
Yes.
I saw a possibility, like after he said what he said about meeting the goddess. Like I saw a possibility and I wasn't going to just let him scoot out of there. Like whereas I wasn't attracted to him the first time we met, he just said the magic words as far as I was concerned. And so I've never been that bold before. Like I'm a very bold person, but when I'm interested in someone, I'm not so much. I'm much more shy. But
Mm,
I said, I'm not letting this guy get out of here. I'm like stopping him in his tracks and I'm going to say something. And I told the truth. Like
mm,
I said, this is what reaction I had. This is what my body said when you said that. And I need you to know that I'm a force to be reckoned with. Like so don't mess with me if you aren't up for being disrupted. Like I will disrupt you. I know that.
mm.
So it was really telling the truth. And I'll take it a step further, which is to say, the first time we ever got together physically, when we decided to actually have sex with each other, we also told the truth.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
we did a bubble and we did desires, fears, and boundaries. And I heard myself say, I desire to have somebody who's close to home that I can count on. Like I live in Phoenix, you live in Phoenix. I really desire to have like I don't, maybe you'll be part-time, but whatever it is, like I desire to have someone I can actually count on when I come home from traveling.
Mm.
And he then said the same thing back to me. He said, I want that too. And my ears were like, did he just say what I said? How is that? Like, I never had that experience before. I never had the experience of really being that honest and telling the truth. Like, the stakes are high, but let it rip. And then he said the same thing back to me. And then I was like, oh my God, this has potential.
Mm.
And I just don't think I've ever been that honest before. I've definitely been more coy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a,
coy is what kills that. It kills the connection. And I don't think we know as human beings how to be straight with one another to the point that we really get each other, like being met. And I have a saying that I like to bring out, which I think all human beings, whether male or female, it doesn't matter, human beings desire to be seen,
mm.
met, and held. we desire that. We need it. It's an actual
Mhm.
need. And I didn't see her until she stepped in front of me. She didn't see me until I said what I said. And that's
Right.
where we met. And now we're in the space of holding. And we continue to see each other, we continue to meet each other, we continue to hold each other, even when it's hard. I love what your program is called, Come Back to Love, because that is the core piece of what Laurie and I do.
Hmm.
So the
Yes.
last thing I would add in here, the last little message that I would add in here is that there needs to be a space in which you meet each other. And you've got to open that space, be willing to open for that. And that's, I think, what neither one of us were looking for someone other than Laurie wanted someone who, would be in Phoenix that she could come home to and rely on and be, someone who was solid, who was there. And I was looking for someone who was that, but more part-time because I wasn't looking for a full-time lover.
Mm.
And when she said that, I went, oh, that's great. Now, what I didn't know is that it feeds my ADHD because I could be all over the place. But when I'm hyper focused on someone, it's like it's really powerful.
Mm.
And not hyper focused in a strange way, but just, I need to focus on someone.
Yeah.
And so it was beautiful, perfect for me.
Hmm.
Well, it turned out that what I wanted was more than that, and so did she. And we didn't discover that until time went on.
Right.
And that's the development part, I think, that needs to be added to seen, met, and held. We need to be able to develop with each other together.
Yeah. Yeah, well, in a little bit, we'll talk about extraordinary lovers and what that is and what it means and how to create it. But I just want to go back to, even though it's like way back to just the beginning, because I always want to highlight this for the clients and participants that I work with, and also now for the thousands of listeners, that Laurie, when you met Michael, and maybe Michael, when you met Laurie, like you weren't attracted at first. You were like, oh, yeah, okay, fine guy. I'll talk to him about wine and go about the rest of my evening. And that happens
Correct.
so often. It's happened to me over and over again where I don't feel attracted at that first meeting. And a lot of people will say, well, I didn't feel attracted. So, that's the end of that. Now, you had obviously a universe interfered and brought you guys together again because obviously you're meant to be together. But just to highlight that, like sometimes that first meeting or that first phone call, if you're in the realm of dating and seeking a partner, it's like just allow that to be and be open to the next piece because, we don't see
Yeah.
what we don't see, and people are nervous and have other things on their minds. And I think you referred to this a little bit, Lori, like, um, so people have an idea in their mind about what their partner's going to look like and how tall they're going to be and how short they're going to be and how, all these things. And just like
The
we need to
list.
let the list. Yeah. And
The
I'm
list.
just a fan of not of letting go of that list and being open to,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't fit any of my, I didn't check any of those boxes.
Hmm.
But then when he was speaking,
Right.
I couldn't help but respond to that. Like my whole body responded to that. And I
Yeah.
said, wow, who is this guy? And then, I just got in his way. I said, "I'm not letting him walk out of this room
Right.
without saying something." So
Well,
I'm so glad you did.
it was
thank you. And I
right. I'm so
disrupted your
glad you
life.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really. And I
Well, it was
disrupted your
very
life.
courageous. And before we go on a commercial break, I want to highlight that piece as well. Like courage and communication is something, I think all of us are often working on with ourselves and with our students and clients and participants in our retreats. And it takes courage to be that honest. And part of it is letting go of what's going to happen after you speak, right? Like he might have said, okay, thanks for sharing. Have a good night. I'm going to the movies. And you probably would have been like, well, okay. you know,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly. I didn't have it. There were no
no offense,
stakes.
Michael.
Not taking and
He was like that for a while anyway. I mean,
there
he
was
was like that.
yeah.
He was not easy in the beginning.
No.
So he would say, don't try to have a relationship with me. And I would say, I'm not. It's okay.
Yeah.
And then he would go, "Oh, she just said that." Hmm. And then he would come back, and he would go, "You're not trying to have a relationship with me, are you?" And I'd be like, "Nope."
It was funny because I had said that to her because I was newly out of a relationship when we met.
Right.
And what I noticed so I went after that relationship ended, um, amicably, I went into a program at Landmark, that really took me into like different parts of my life. And one of the things that I became aware of was that when I'm in a relationship, that I tend to dilute myself. Like I lose part of myself in order to be with this person. And what I had been building, it's called the Wisdom Program. I highly recommend it.
Hmm.
But as I was, what I was learning was that there are parts of myself that I will give away, that I'll sacrifice inside of a relationship. And so the reason I had told her that was, I said, listen, don't try to have a relationship with me. Just relate to me.
Hmm.
I lose myself. And I don't want to do that because I'm the best version of myself right now. And I
Hmm.
want to continue to grow that with you, but I don't want to lose that in order to be with you. And she said, okay. So
Hmm.
she totally knew what I meant when I said it. And it made the difference. It made the difference for longevity because I could see her saying, I won't do that, and then acting that out, like not trying to have the relationship with me, holding me back, telling me to do certain things.
I didn't try to manipulate him. And
Yeah.
that's you know, it's a very common practice with people. They try to manipulate each other.
Yeah.
I didn't try to do it. I just let him be.
Yeah.
And
So
there's a key here in that. If you'll write this down, there's a key to that inside of how you're going to grow with each other, and that is the difference between a relationship and relating.
Hmm.
Relating is like an ongoing verb. It's happening right now, right now, right now, right
Hmm.
now. Relationship is a thing that we build that people see the veneer of. And they think, oh, what a great relationship they have. Instead of, look at the way they relate to one another.
Beautiful.
Look at how powerfully they interact.
Hmm.
That's different. And so that's what we're committed to.
Beautiful. Beautiful distinction. I can't wait to dive into more of this. We're going to take a quick commercial break right now. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Come Back to Love Radio. I'm Robyn Vogel, your host, and we are on Dream Vision 7. And I am so happy to be here with Laurie Handlers and Michael Gibson. And we ended that first section with a beautiful, beautiful teaching about the distinction between relating and relationship. I can't emphasize enough what you said, which is like relationship is this thing we have, like a coat or a house, and it's like we decorate it and we want it to look a certain way, and there's all these projections onto it, and it's just, ugh. And the difference between that and relating, and honestly, when we first popped on this radio show, and I could see you because we're also on video, you were relating with each other as your audio was joining. And it was the first thing that came to me energetically and visually was how you were relating with each other right before we began behind the scenes. And it opened up my heart right away. So let's talk a little
good.
more about that. And then if you can weave in, because you've been doing these workshops, Extraordinary Lovers, yeah? You've been doing them for several years now. And I know, and it seems what I've witnessed is that it's growing and growing and growing, and more people are coming, and you're offering it in different formats and for different people, people in different types of situations. And so I'd love to bring in some of the, what is an extraordinary lover? I read something you wrote, Michael, like extraordinary lovers are a rare breed, I think is what you said. Um, if I misquoted you, please correct me, but there's just, yeah, a lot to be said about that. So
Shall I? Do you want to?
Yeah,
Well, I have a rant that I have first, which is that
let's hear
go.
it.
when I was growing up, I thought that I would be dressed in a crinoline outfit, and I would have one glass slipper, and then some prince would come with the other one. And then we would ride off into the sunset on a white horse and live happily ever after. And that was what was planted into me by Walt Disney. And that actually, as I come to find out by traveling the world, that was actually planted into everybody. It's been translated into every single language, and everybody around the world knows what happily ever after is. However, what is happily ever after? Like who can even attain that? Because we were never taught that. We were taught algebra, geometry, trigonometry, language arts, foreign language, social studies. We never learned anything about loving a person in our education and how to sustain love, which to most people is the most important thing in their whole life. But we just got this happily ever after thing. And so it's a haunting actually. And what Michael and I have discovered is that a lot of times couples don't get any support for being in a couple. Like there's nothing reinforcing them. There's no communication skills that they had to learn ahead of time. There's no repairing skills. There's no what happens when there's a rupture. Like there's nothing for them. And they often feel shame for not getting it right, like not being able to live happily ever after. The divorce statistics are staggering. 50 something percent in first marriages, 60 something percent in second marriages, and 70 something percent in third marriages. And that's only the ones that bothered to get married. What about all the other people who live together and they also separate?
Right.
So it tells me that we've been holding a false ideal about who we have to be, how we have to relate, and we don't really have any skills for it. So Michael and I determined when we were together after about, I don't know, 5 years, we said, how come this is different?
Yeah.
What do we have that's different for you? And what do we have that's different for me? Like what makes it different from any other relationship we've ever had? And then we started to annotate that. And we realized we had something that can actually educate people to live happily ever after, even though I like to slap Walt Disney around. Um, I mean, it's an ideal that like everyone has it romantically tucked inside, and they don't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily come out, but when things are failing, it sure is a hammer in which we hammer ourselves with it. Like, how come I couldn't do it? How come it didn't last? What did I do wrong? And actually, nothing. You didn't have the skills to do it right to begin with.
Right.
Right.
And so our stance is extraordinary lovers is extra. Like it only takes a little extra to take it from ordinary to extraordinary. And it doesn't, it all you need is some skills. It's not rocket science, but we found out that we had some skills that we that
Mm.
we that we hadn't figured out before. No one had told us them. So that's where we're coming from.
Well,
Just a little extra.
part of that was that after we after we started this in 2019, we started sharing this information with people, and it's evolved over time. But from very early on, we became aware that the couples that we were working with and the people that we were interacting with, um, they were doomed to fail. So we started to say, couples are an endangered species. You know, a lot of what's going on right now in the sacred sexuality uh, world is let's be poly, let's go open, let's swingers, let's do all this extracurricular stuff, which believe me, I'm completely fine with. I'm not going to yuck your yum. Have fun, go for it. However, when you find out that you're interacting with one person, whether you're in a poly, you're working with one person at a time. And so how do you make that work? So the work that we do is not just, it's about couples, but it's about being able to interact with a person individually, whether you're in a multiple situation or you have an open relating, How do you get to those places where you're all on the same playing field? You're all playing the same game. Laurie has this great analogy about tennis, right? The rules of tennis are the same all around the world.
You don't have to speak the language, but you can play tennis with somebody in Russia.
Right.
You step on the tennis court and you're playing tennis. Doesn't matter what the language is. And so there's none of that for being in a couple. So what we're doing is we're drawing the lines. We're putting the fence up. We're showing people how to play and how to lob and how to do all the things inside of relating. And then we look at that and we say, oh, that's a relationship, right? But the thing is, the work of relationship is relating. So when people look at us, they go, wow, you have an amazing relationship. And we look at each other and chuckle and go, it's because we do the work of relating.
Mm-hmm.
And to the name of your show, we return to love over and over again. And the first one to return wins. So like whoever comes back to love first wins. And
Yes.
because you both win when somebody comes back to love, like we don't stay out. We don't, some people say never go to sleep angry. Well, we have occasionally, but we come right back as soon as we have a chance to talk it out. We return to love as fast as possible. Michael will tell you that I do, like really fast. Like I don't, for me, it's like, what am I going to gain by being mad? Like I've already been mad in my life. It didn't, it didn't make a difference. Like it really didn't. I'm going to teach them a lesson. Like, no, I'm
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
The cool thing here is that it only takes one of you to return to love. And
Yes.
that's something that we teach in
Yeah.
Extraordinary Lovers. And I'll give you a brief overview of what we do in the experience. We have two offerings here. One is the experience, which is 4 days. It's truly an in-depth, like immersive program where you come out of this thing going, holy shit, what just happened? And there's follow-up support for people. And then we have the retreat, which is the same curriculum, but it's spread out over 7 days. It's so much more spacious. When you leave the retreat, you feel like you've been on a retreat. Like you ever been to a retreat and you feel like, oh my God, I need a vacation. I just had it's
That's the
not
other work
that.
that we do.
It's not that. You actually come away going, wow, you feel rejuvenated. And so, because we give you the time to really integrate all of it.
Mm.
So the Extraordinary Lovers Experience and Retreat covers three things. We call them the three thresholds of love, moving from ordinary to extraordinary. So the first threshold of love is self-love, loving yourself in extraordinary ways, in new ways, in creative ways,
Mm.
and understanding what love really is. So we do a lot of work on what does love mean to you, and how does it show up in your life? And then how do you love another? So that's the second threshold, which is love of a partner or love of an other. The second threshold really brings you into the communication part, the part where you can have extremely courageous conversations in a way that leads you back to love. So the return to love process is always involved. And then the third threshold, which is the most exciting to me, is love that manifests. Now, how do you take the love that you two have, this energy, this power that you've been working together towards, individually and as a couple, and turn that into something magical in the world? That right there is what changes worlds. That's going to make the planet a better place. So when your children, your grandchildren can see the love that you have and they go, I want that, and you can teach them how to do it, that will change in just one generation. That could change a lot of things.
Mm.
That's a really interesting thing you just said because it brought me to watching my grandparents on my mother's side fighting all the time, yelling at each other all the time, mainly her yelling at him and him just sort of being very quiet and kind of, tail between his legs. And they were both wonderful. I loved them and love them dearly, but I'm just realizing more so even in this moment, like how much that impacted me. I assumed that they hated each other. This is Robyn as a little girl. I assumed that they hated each other because why would anybody yell like that if they actually liked the
Yeah.
person, never mind
Right.
loved them? And I spent my whole childhood with them and my teenage years wondering why they were together. Like I just couldn't, it didn't compute to me that they loved each other and were staying together because they loved each other. I just had this big question mark about it. And I'm sure that it impacted me more than I maybe even realize now, even though I've done, so much self discovery and healing work over time. But when you said that, I was like, oh wow, like I witnessed that as an example of relationship. And of course, that yelling and that anger passed down to my parents. And my mother was sick when she was young, but before even that, there was a lot of that similar kind of energy coming from her to him. So that's how it got also passed down, like along gender lines. And of course, we all do this. We make conclusions, we take on beliefs. You talked about the fairy tale belief, Laurie. We all just make that what the truth is about the world, and then we spend our lives unraveling those things that are actually not true. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's really beautiful what you
Well,
said about changing the generations, you know,
Yeah.
going
Being
forward.
an example, I love what Gandhi said. Everybody knows this quote, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
Now, if we took that honestly, if we were to be able to be honest about our current um, our current situations, are we being the change that we want to see in the world?
Mm.
And I feel like we talk about it a lot.
no, we are.
No, not us. I'm saying,
Oh.
but people talk. I'm human beings
Yeah.
in general
Yeah.
talk about it a lot. And then there are a few, and I don't think they're a select few. I think they've chosen. There are a few out there that really are desiring to see a better world.
Yeah.
And so our goal really is to take that to the couple level because we have a lot of individuals who are amazing, who are out there doing the work, and it's incredible to see. But to actually have a couple that could show up and say, you know, what it means to love one another is so much greater and grander than to be at odds with each other and still holding on. We're going to give it that college try. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then 30 years later, you hate each other and everybody knows it, but you're sticking together.
Ugh.
For
I,
the children or whatever.
yeah,
There's so
Yeah.
many reasons.
So many
right?
reasons. Yeah.
And if people even have family reunions anymore, I'm not even sure that that's happening anymore. But if people do have time, we know which they're still just sticking it out, wait until so and so dies.
Ugh.
Um,
Yeah.
and I
Gosh.
feel like there's something bigger here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
I
Let's
think we
take
can
a,
change the whole culture.
yeah, go ahead. I was going to say, let's take a quick commercial break and we'll come back to there's something bigger here
Great.
because there
Awesome.
is. Okay, welcome back to Come Back to Love Radio. I'm here with Laurie Handlers and Michael Gibson, and we are talking about extraordinary love. And we finished the last segment with there must be something better. So tell us all about the workshop and how we can get to that better.
Yeah. So so Michael explained that we have a 4 day and then we have a week long, and we also have something for singles.
Hmm.
So in the 4 day, we do those three things: self-love, love of the other, love that manifests. We do the same thing in the weekend. I mean, in the week long. Um, we've decided to do one for singles also, who so that when they meet someone,
Mm,
they don't screw it up in the very beginning. Like they actually like vet the person and they actually speak their truth so
mm,
they can move through spaces faster and more honestly, like they're not holding back. So we'll be doing one for singles as well. So we have 2 weekends coming up in the Denver Boulder area. May 1st to 4th is for couples, and then May 8th through 11th is for singles.
mm.
And we'll be doing that uh, as I said, in Denver Boulder. And then later in the month, May 28th, we'll be in Greece for the week long. So yes, we'll be outside of Athens,
Whew.
and we'll be doing the week long. And in between, we'll do a little bit of sightseeing and history stuff in Greece as well. We're very close to the biggest Apollo temple that exists in Greece, and so people will have a chance. We'll do a picnic
Wow.
lunch or something. So we'll be there. And basically, people can find out about these retreats on our website. It's my name, lauriehandlers.com. Wait a second, I have to cough.
It's a coughing break. Take a sip of your tea or your coffee. Jot down lauriehandlers.com, and that's where you'll find all that information that Laurie just shared.
I like to spell it though.
Yeah.
Laurie, handlers, handlers.com. That way
Yes.
they don't mix me up with some other person or whatever.
Someone else. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. And so
So that's
that's,
what we'll be doing. Yeah.
mhm,
And then we'll continue to do them throughout this year and next year. And then Michael has very big plans for things like an extravaganza, and we'll be licensing artwork to some other couples who are dedicated to the same thing, to be able
nice.
to deliver this program so that it becomes more of a movement, not just us doing it. So
Beautiful.
that's all on the next
Roadmap.
wave.
In the
Yeah,
future.
that's
Yes.
all on the roadmap.
Coming soon. Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's part of that manifest that we've talked about,
Hmm.
how that we can actually move something into the world. Poor
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
And
it's so the other thing that I think has this part that we called manifest was something that we started out looking at, like how can we help couples? I mean, if they're really struggling and we're seeing all these crazy, statistics, how could we help them? And then we started saying, well, how could we help them? Just us. We need to figure out a way to get people involved. And
sure.
so then it hit me one day, we need to turn this into a movement.
Hmm.
And what we're really committed to is making being a couple cool again, you know,
Yes.
right? Like when did it become not cool to be in a couple? And I think there's a lot of reasons because people just didn't know how to deepen their love, how to make their love pervasive, and
Yeah.
so what we're giving is the tools, the practices, and we use tantra throughout. Although we don't harp on tantra as like the big uh, background for what we do, but really it has a lot to do with the work that we're involved in. Tantra makes a huge difference because it incorporates everything, your breath, your sound, and movement, and it helps you to embody all the things that we teach. So,
Exactly.
there's a high level of that happening in all the work that we do, in all of
Mhm.
our experiences. So, yeah, if this is something that really speaks to you, uh, we're here. We're here to, expand with you and really to grow this movement.
And if you're in a
Beautiful.
couple, I would just leave you with this. When you're arguing, kind of like what Robin said about her grandparents, when
Mhm.
you're arguing, the question would be, would you rather be right or be in love?
Yeah.
Yes.
You
Beautiful.
know, it's that's the question. Like, so what if you're right
Yep.
and you lose everything?
Right.
It's not,
Yes.
yeah.
That
So,
is such an important question to ask in many, many, many situations. Yes. Especially
yeah,
these days. So
yeah,
I think you have a free gift to offer our listeners, and that's a great way for them to
yes.
connect with you, learn more about you, get onto your email list, and find out about these extraordinary workshops and
Well, and,
retreats.
and this is something I'm gonna have to kind of set up a little bit.
Sure.
However, uh, what we found is that in relating, in most relationships, they devolve. They devolve from being in love. Like if you were to imagine a bullseye, being in love is the point, right? That's what we want. So that's the bullseye. But then what happens is over time, we find ourselves moving away from love, and it's unconscious and sort of automatic, and it's just the way relationships go. And so the second ring, stepping out of love, is called resentment. The third ring out is resistance, and the last one is revenge. And that's really where relationships completely explode and fall apart.
Yeah.
And so we have this thing called the 3 R's. And that's what resentment, resistance, and revenge. And so we've created a quiz that people can take to identify where they might be inside of the 3 R's, or if they're in the 3 R's, or maybe if they're in the love. And if they are, then we have solutions for every area. And most importantly, if you're in the love, oh, we've got some great techniques for you to stay in the love. So the quiz is 3rsquiz.com. Now you can go to 3rsquiz, the number 3, quiz.com, and you can take the quiz right now. Or if you want to see the video, you can go to video.3rsquiz.com, check out the video, and then go take the quiz.
Awesome. Well, those links, all of them, will be in the copy underneath our radio show and our podcast. And I always encourage listeners to re-listen, to download the episode, re-listen over and over again. There were so many beautiful teachings and salient points to this whole conversation, along with getting those URLs exactly right so that they can actually go. And I love the way that you put that together, those 3 R's. That is, for someone who's worked with couples for 25 years, like that just sums it up so well. I wish I had that model, like, all these years so I could assist and support those couples in evaluating and assessing where they are, and then are you ready to make some changes? And it sounds like you have tools in each of those areas too to support people in coming out of that and back to love. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Robyn, thank you so much. Thank you for having us on your show. It's really exciting.
Yeah, you're so
Yeah.
welcome. I'm so happy to see both of you again, to hear both of you again, to listen to both of you again, and to have this really incredible conversation. And I'm so excited about your work, and I hope that this episode helps spread extraordinary lovers, because as you said, we need way more extraordinary lovers in the world, and for the next generation and the next generation. So thank you for
Absolutely.
holding that stake in the ground. It's so, so important. Yeah. And thanks
Thank
to our
you.
listeners. You can tune in any and every Thursday at 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or listen to this on your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.